NelsonJoypad.com bring you another original. It's fucking great.
I've never been what you could call an educated gamer. Now I know it sounds strange for a reviewer and games journalist to say that, but everything I've learned about video games, every title that I've played or article that I've written, has been brought about by my own experience with games that interest me. I've heard of the roguelike genre before, but I've never really understood exactly what the term meant. I have friends that love them, who tell me that it's about turn-based strategy, permadeath, endless dungeon crawling, and a simple storyline. As I played through Ziggurat on the Xbox One, I couldn't help but feel that, aside from this being a first-person shooter, Ziggurat has all the trademarks of a roguelike. It intrigued and frustrated me, but ultimately, I had to keep playing. Ziggurat is the new title from Milestone Studios, and I do believe it's the first roguelike that I've ever played. There will no doubt be people out there shaking their heads in dismay at the ignorance of such a statement from a so-called games reviewer, but let me explain why. In Ziggurat, you have to travel the procedurally generated levels of the Ziggurat as part of your final test to become a fully fledged member of the Davidson Brotherhood. You play as an apprentice who has been studying arcane magic for 2 decades in preparation for this trial. Okay, so the story isn't great, and aside from a few scrawled text boxes at the start and the end of the game, there's not much of a story at all. I did love the sound of the pencil scratching on the paper as the text appeared on the screen. That's got to count for something. I was impressed by the ruggedness of the gameplay in Ziggurat. You begin your quest with only your magic wand to protect you. As you explore the Ziggurat and you discover new rooms, you'll pick up other weapons to combat the various enemies. There are 4 types of weapons. First, we have your wand. The wand uses mana, which regenerates over time. Now this can't be swapped, and it acts as more of a sidearm in terms of the stereotypical FPS. Second, we have your spell casting. Now there's a good number of spells available to pick up, if the levels decide you deserve one. Using a fire spell to obliterate a tough enemy is fantastic, and firing a flaming, homing skull at your target may be one of the most badass things that a wizard can pull off. The third weapon type is your stave, more akin to Gandalf's staff. These weapons are a great provider for crowd control. In my time with Ziggurat, I've found that the staves were the rarest of the weapons. It may have been due to their effectiveness in combat that Milestone may have been concerned about making players too overpowered, or it may have just been dumb luck. Who knows? The final weapon type is your alchemical weapon set. These tend to be weapons like grenades, explosive hand cannons, and in one level I found an ice crossbow. Each weapon uses its own resource for ammo, which forces the player to swap and change the selected weapons. It's a great system that keeps the diversity of the gameplay alive. Each weapon has 2 firing modes that can be used to drastically different effects. There's something satisfying about throwing a handful of grenades at a gaggle of demonic carrots. Throughout each level of the Ziggurat, you will need to defeat enemies, traverse traps, find a key, and defeat a boss battle to proceed to the next level. The enemies are varied, and walking into any room is a gamble. All of the enemies have different abilities, from launching exploding fireballs at you, melee attacks, and a whole range of ranged attacks. Each trip into combat is unique. Some rooms will add a modifier to the gameplay. I walked into a room and was instantly plunged into almost complete darkness while I was attacked from all sides. Others increase or decrease your damage, some make enemies tiny or oversized, and in one particularly troubling room, it removed all of my HUD markings. It really adds replay value, as I've put in over a dozen hours, and I've never had the same experience twice. As you clear rooms and kill enemies, you'll pick up experience gems that you need in order to level up. Now, leveling up in Ziggurat is a crapshoot. When you gain enough experience, you'll be given the option of 2 random cards. Each one will either unlock an upgrade for you or grant you a perk of some kind. These are totally random, and in one game, I lucked out with getting 2 upgrades to my maximum health and the ability to recover health by breaking things, all by the time I reached level 5. In another, all I unlocked was upgrades to my overall mana pools. Now, while the latter of these upgrades was helpful, I never stood a chance against the harder boss battles in the game with a measly 80 health. Keeping with the randomness of the levelling up system, occasionally Ziggurat will provide you with a room that you can offer health, mana, and your alchemy resource to the gods. They can provide boons such as increasing your damage in your next combat, giving you increased speed, and so on. Offering your precious resources to these gods isn't always a good thing. when the good Lord giveth, the good Lord taketh away. I've had a reduction to all of my stats, and I've even had a weapon taken off me when I visited these shrines. The randomness of Ziggurat's levelling up and buff system is another aspect of the game that makes me consider it a roguelike. It can be incredibly unforgiving, and not just the levelling up. In Ziggurat, when you die, the game is over. There's no checkpoints, no lives, and no saves. It carries a weight of consequence that is rare in the FPS market, and while getting sucker punched by a fire-breathing dodo seconds before the final boss got me angry, I have to respect the decision to make such a divisive choice in the game design. New characters are unlocked by achieving certain tasks within Ziggurat, opening 10 mystery boxes, dealing 15,000 damage with various weapons, and by beating the game. Each new character has slightly different attributes. Some are geared towards one particular kind of weapon combat, while others gain experience at a faster rate. All of the characters play differently, and while it can be a bit of a grind to unlock some of them, it adds yet more replay value to the title. Ziggurat is a game that I really enjoyed. It can be frustrating and confusing, but once I found my feet, I loved it. The procedural level design keeps each playthrough fresh, and the artwork and audio is adequate to the task. It's not going to win many awards for visuals, but I was never taken out of the gameplay, which is what Ziggurat's main focus is. Enemies are numerous and varied, and with plenty of weapons to try out, there's no shortage of replay value. Roguelikes are usually defined by their RPG qualities, difficulty and randomness. While Ziggurat doesn't have an in-depth character builder or progression system, and the fact it's an FPS, I still think it qualifies as a roguelike. Its gameplay is robust and fulfilling, and has a ton of replay value. The levelling system can be hit or miss with random perks to choose from, but with challenging enemies, modifiers and no respawns, checkpoints or saves, if it isn't a roguelike, then it's definitely roguelike adjacent. Ziggurat is a fun game that is a challenging experience. Traversing trap rooms and big boss battles makes this more than your simple shooter.